Hi, can you make beer on the stove? Certainly. This is my first attempt at an all-grain batch. Follow me, we'll see how this goes. This is based on a German light recipe guideline. I'm a little off per most notes, but it's what I decided to do. I have a little over 1 pound of Avant-Garde Pilsner Malt. It's actually 1.2 pounds. I'm going to use 0.5 ounces of Perle German hops total. And our yeast is going to be a Lallemand Kolsch style ale yeast. We're only going to use a teaspoon. For starting, I have 1.25 gallons of water in a standard 8-quart stock pot. Starting temp. So this is the Thermopen. 60.3 degrees. This is a thermopop. Shows 60 degrees. You took a little longer. And then this is a KM14 waterproof brewing thermometer I got from Northern Brewer. And this one reports 60.8 degrees. So I'm starting with cold water. We're going to heat this up to 113 degrees, put in our grain, and then we'll go from there. Almost there. 111 degrees Fahrenheit, 113. All right, we're gonna turn this down. We're gonna take our grain bag. It's a big grain bag. We're gonna put it in. We're gonna hook it around. So we're doing a brew in a bag method, where all of our grain is going to be in a bag. So it's going to be really easy to pull out. And then we're going to slowly pour in our grain. The one nice thing about the brew in a bag method is it's a really easy way to filter your grain. And you don't have to worry about what's called the stuck sparge, which is using other forms of filtration. So now I'm going to just kind of stir this up a little bit. Make sure there's no clumps. Everything looks good. Oops. Some grain stuck in my... There we go. Okay. So of course the grain was a little cold, so the mash went down 112, so not too bad. It was only a little bit of grain. Right. We're going to get this back to 113 degrees, and we're going to let this then try to sit for about 10 minutes. And I should clarify, 113 degrees Fahrenheit. Sorry about that. Starting my 10-minute timer. I'll see you when that's about done. So we've got 1 minute left, and I wasn't watching as close as I should have. I'm now at 132 degrees. It'll be okay. When I checked when we had 4 minutes left, it was at 113, so I just had it re-turned up a little too high. So once this beeps, we are going to turn up the heat a little bit more to get this up to 152 degrees. And that will then be our next mash thrust. Cuckoo clock went off. Alright, we're at 132. Turning the heat back on to get us up to 152. And then we're going to leave this at around 152 for hopefully 30 minutes. See you when we get up there. Oop. Just a little over 152. Turn it off. She should hold really good. Keep a closer eye on this. I'm gonna set it for 30 minutes. And then I'll keep checking a little more often. The reason why we do different temperatures is to help the enzymes in the grain bring out the sugars that are inside the grain. The 113 degrees Fahrenheit is what's called a protein rest, so it helps break up some of those amino acid chains to make it easier to get at parts of the sugar. Then this 152 is the sweet spot in between two enzyme activities, the beta amylase and the alpha amylase. It's just different ways that they break up the sugar chains in the wort, and so this is around the sweet spot to be effective without having to cycle through a lot of different temperatures. After this is done for 30 minutes, we're going to raise it up just a little bit to about 158, and then we're going to hold it there for 15 minutes. When doing all grain brewing, the mashing is one of the longest steps. Just because you're trying to maximize your efficiency. There are some people that have had success doing much shorter time frames. All in all, this is only a 30, 40, 50, 55 minute mash. Most go for an hour, 90 minutes, 60 to 90 minutes total. So we're a little under. Our boil is definitely going to be short. Our mashing is done. We are going to pull the grain bag out. Put it in this colander and bowl so that way it can drain a little bit. The only downfall about using a very big bag. Different schools. Some say you don't squeeze the bag, others say you do squeeze the bag. Really, lots of testing by and by hasn't really shown any big negativity. Generally what usually happens is if you squeeze the bag, you might be getting a little more like dusty type small material, so it might make your beer cloudier. I'm just at least trying to get most of this drained off so I don't make a big mess on the stove here. Pull this closer. Woo! So what's gonna happen, we're now gonna bring this to a boil. And then the drippings from this and I'm going to put in this mason jar to get our yeast going. So while we were waiting on the last round, I got our 0.25 ounces of hops. These hops smell delicious. German Perle is one of my favorites. So get this boiling, we'll add in our hops, go from there. Don't forget, if you're ever using a container for taking some wort to reactivate your yeast, make sure you sanitize it. This is just some Star San, and so sanitize both the cover and the actual jar, and then we'll put a little bit of our sweet wort in here. We'll get that cooled down about 90-ish degrees, and we'll put in a teaspoon of our dried yeast. we're just about to a boil. And as you can see, there's a lot of what you could say foam on top. This is actually called hot break. It's proteins in the beer and the wort breaking up. So it's a good advantage to keep a close eye on it so you don't let it spoil over the pot. It is very sticky. So now we're boiling. So I'm adding our first addition of hops, and we're going to start the timer for 20 minutes. 90 degrees. I am just using normal kitchen utensils. Especially for small batch brewing, you don't need a lot. Big. That's a teaspoon of yeast. I'm going to pour it right on in. I'm going to let it sit for a couple of minutes before we give it a little shake. And this will get our yeast active for when we ferment. With my open bag of hops and my open bag of yeast, all I do is I put it in a Ziploc bag and then put it in the fridge. The yeast can definitely go in the fridge. Should be good for hopefully a couple of weeks to your next brew day. Our boil is done. I am going to add in our last bit of hops. Then I'm also going to stir this around. And I'm going to transfer this to our ice bath, and I'll show you what that looks like. Here is our ice bath. It's cold water with an ice pack, or you can use regular ice. And so what we're doing is we're going to get this cold. Now, since the wort is no longer boiling, that means anything that touches it has to be sanitized. So if you use a spoon to stir the wort, make sure you sanitize it before you... We're going to look to get this down to about 80 degrees. So while this is chilling, I'm going to get our little gallon fermenter up, sanitize that. We will then get ready. Got my gallon fermenter with some star sand. My favorites are the 3-piece, just because they're a little smaller. I'm going to use the screw on, just so that everything sits smoother. Our ice bath is doing well. Don't forget, the outside water can also move to help circulate all the cooling power it has. I just checked a little bit ago. Our wort went from boiling to about 135 degrees, and it's only been about 5 minutes. So, small batch brewing cools off really fast. You can see our wort spinning around. That's because I sanitized the spoon and stirred it. Not fast enough to add a whole lot of bubbles. Didn't mean to add air bubbles. But enough so that way all the hops that we have in there will do what's called a whirlpool effect. And they'll move to the center and collect there. So that way when we try to pour this out, we won't get a lot of that into our fermenter. Looks to be about 9.5 bricks for our gravity. 78. So I'm going to do 79. So we're now going to transfer this to our fermenter. Being very careful to not splash. One nice thing about Star San sanitizer is it's considered a no-rinse sanitizer, so I don't have to rinse this off. I looked a little closer on the refractometer, and it was about 9.6 bricks, which goes to 1.034 gravity, so the amount of sugar in your water concentration. So that was spot on. I'm going to carefully try to pour this without spilling a whole lot, but I want to splash a little bit because we need oxygen in there for the yeast to be able to eat. I'm trying to pour slowly because I don't want to get a lot of the gunk that's on the bottom there. The other thing to remember is right a little more than a gallon boil off, it looks like, but we don't want to fill the whole thing up right all the way. I'm going to do that because we need room for the krausen, which is part of the yeast working, to eat. And here is our vial of yeast. That's all ready to go. Smells good. Smells like bread. Pouring our yeast on top. And now we need to sanitize and put on our airlock. You could fill this airlock with sanitizer if you wanted to. That'll work as well. I'm going to go ahead, fill this with vodka. We'll put it in the fermentation chamber. Hey, so my first all grain batch is in the fermentation chamber. Good to go. I'll let you know when it starts bubbling. Next batch is coming up, batch number 2. So, if you want to be notified, please subscribe. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. I'll see you next time. This has been Bradley with 2B Brewing. It's been amazing, love, and fun. Bye.